And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Josh, and welcome to Conversations on the Fringe, live with you Monday through, not Monday through Friday, every Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we bring you those conversations that people tend to not want to have with other people, that are outside of the brink of the norm, that are on the fringe, that tend to go deep within the mind, within the psyche, and sometimes expansive within the spiritual realms of our world. And tonight, I am joined by Lea Anne Carroll. Lea Anne is a certified Reiki master, a thigh massage therapist, yoga teacher, certified level 2 DNA repair, theta practitioner, experienced crystal healer, holographic sound practitioner. She has been waking people up and healing people for a very, very long time. I met her out in Dallas, and we immediately just hit it off in conversation. And I've said, you got to come on my show because I want to get my audience introduced to what you're saying and everything that you're talking about, because we're just vibing on the same level in the sense of what's happening right now on the planet, the ascension, what's happening internal to us, how we're all growing, we're all maturing here as spiritual beings. And so we're going to have a fun conversation tonight about her journey, what's brought her to these points in her life, what is going on right now with our planet, with the earth, with humanity, how we're all in need of healing, and how we can all take actionable steps towards this. Lea Anne, how are you?
I am so good, Josh. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm glad you actually said yes. That's that's a start, right? That's a start. My show's not for everybody.
Well, this conversation isn't for everyone, but I do know that more and more people are interested. Even if I find when I first learned about this kind of thing, it was decades ago, and people didn't even want to know about it. And now, even people that are sort of on the fringe of what I call normies, they tell me more about that. I've been, more and more people are being open to growing spiritually.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you. I want to know how you came into being the person you are today. How did this spiritual awakening, this gift that you've been given by the universe, develop within you? Where did it start?
That's a good question. When I was young, I used to pretend. I was a little girl, and I used to pretend like I could heal people.
I like that.
And if I didn't understand someone, I would pretend like I could mind meld with them. And I would close my eyes and count to 10. And I would pretend like we could automatically, when I said 10, we would be able to understand each other. So I think that I've always wanted to have this type of life. But, it wasn't natural. It wasn't natural in the space, in the society at the time. And my parents were very Catholic. And I went to a very, very strict school. I mean, the boys had to have their hair off the collar. They had to wear collared shirts. I had to wear dresses and knee socks. And everything was very orderly. And that was the childhood. So esotericism didn't really fit into that.
It absolutely does not, especially when you start talking about Catholicism. You said something interesting there. You said the mind belt. Now, this is very interesting. When I was younger, I didn't have very many friends. As people can imagine, I didn't have very many friends. I wasn't a very social person. But I would always imagine myself melding minds with another person, like trying to resonate with their consciousness in their head to see if I could understand what they're thinking. It was just something I always did. Yeah.
That's interesting. When I said that, I saw your face. And I think that that's natural. A friend of mine had a baby. And when she was pregnant with this baby, before she even had the baby, I met the baby. And I was working with her. And the baby said in my head, she's going to be a beautiful mother. She's going to be a beautiful pregnant mom. And I thought, oh, you're going to have a baby. And I started talking with this baby. And I learned a little bit about it. And then after the baby was born, I was able to telepath with the baby. And I was one of the few that actually could. And I could see just how delighted the baby was that I actually understood it. I asked mentally, do you remember me? And he said, yes, I do remember you.
Huh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. So you get introduced to this at a very young age. You're kind of like, in this closeted spiritual world. because of your religious beliefs or your parental religious beliefs are being incorporated on you. So what happens? How do you break out? Is it college? Is it drugs?
Well, both.
Yeah.
1987 was a very important year. It was, where the whole 2012 thing, came to a culmination. The December 21st, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar and all of that. Well, the actual beginning of that last segment of time began in August of 1987 with something called Harmonic Convergence.
Yep, I remember this.
And it's when all the planets were lined up. And I did not believe, or if anybody talked to me about astrology or anything like that, I would roll my eyes and leave as quickly as I could. And I didn't have a lot of beliefs. All I knew was I just had a lot of questions. I didn't really have a lot of answers. But harmonic convergence, it happened like within 2 days. I was playing gin with a friend of mine, and he lays a card down and says, "You know what?" And I said, "What?" And he says, "I really think there was an Atlantis." And when he said that, the something inside of me like literally spun in a circle. That was my awakening flag. And before we come here in our incarnated space, we have flags that wake us up at different points. And that was an agreed upon flag. And from that moment, that was my wake up moment. I mean, right there, I literally spun on the inside of myself in that chair.
That's pretty cool. Now, I love what you just said there. So there's a book that I read a long time ago, and it's a book that if anybody ever wants it and they say, "Hey, I'm interested in that book," I usually send it to them. It's like one of those, it's a special book. It's one of those special books you give people. This book has completely changed my freaking life. So to give you an idea, the book's called Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. Okay. I get introduced to it, and I don't remember who introduced it to me, but I get introduced to it. I fall in love with the book. I read all the other books. I go out there and I find an LBL practitioner, someone who does a life between life hypnotic sessions. I ended up finding her. I do this like 3-hour hypnotic session. I learned all about my life in between lives, a few past lives. But then she tells me she's a Reiki master practitioner and does certifications. And this leads me to going through all my various certifications and then going to the Reiki master certification training, where I walked into a room. And it was like I walked down these stairs and I turned left into a room. And it was like a spider web walking into a spider web. It was like I just walked into a spider web, and immediately this guy, he's sitting down in the room, and he's the only one in there. He looks up and goes, "Did you just feel that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Sit down. I think we were meant to talk." And so we start talking. Come to find out, we're connected through lives, and there's some experiences that happen. But he turns me on to Dr. Brian Weiss's work, Many Lives, Many Masters. And like that was just where the journey started to really become these flags, these wake-up flags started happening. Like all of a sudden things just started aligning, things started just like ringing and bells going off, and not only that is the universe aligned to show you that it was true. And it's kind of like this serendipitous synchronicity, right? That the universe just aligns, and everything that you're thinking about all of a sudden is just coming true and manifesting in front of you. And you're like, this is very, very real. So when you say that these flags happen, oh boy, do they happen.
That's true. And the more you tune into your own synchronicities and your own path and what is lining up for you, is the more you see them. And it's almost like your spirit guides are working with you too. And I mean, you're a very physical manifester, and the other guy was too. And you both created a like a time space.
Well,
spider web walking into a spider web. That's a pretty good description.
So the Master Reiki certification, there were 7 of us there. Every single one of us was left-handed. We go through we go through everything. He ends up going on his brother had just passed away. His brother was what we would consider a world-renowned herbologist and botanist. He studied at Oxford University. He studied with the Zulu, the Dogon. He studied with the shamans in South America. He studied with many of the monks across the world. And he had passed away after coming back from South America. And so this gentleman, he gave up his whole life. He gave up his businesses, sold them all, and just said, I'm giving up all possessions. I'm just going to kind of live a simple life, and I'm going to rediscover myself, because he had gave up a lot of his life to materialism. He was on his way to India, and then Nepal, and then Thailand. And he wanted help with his house and stuff like this, so I helped him with a little bit of the legal stuff, because I was studying law at the time. It comes out to be that I have a meditation, and he comes back from his trip, and he was visited by the head Rinpoche at the Sleeping Buddha Temple, who gave him these 2 bracelets and said, you just met someone who's very, very important throughout your string of life, who's connected with you through multiple lives. And the night before, I go into this meditation to find out how we're connected. And I go into this deep trance-like meditation, and I come out with this vision of him as a Roman general and me as a under general. And we have our hands clasped, and we're saying a prayer in Latin that if we shall die in this life, shall we meet each other in the next. And I go meet him the next day, and he's got this little box in front of him, and he tells me this story. And I'm like, well, who is it? And he goes, well, it's you. And I go, whoa, hold on a second. This is crazy. I just had this meditation last night. And I said, where do you think we know each other from? And he goes, I've had this crazy feeling that we were Roman soldiers, and we promised if we died in that life, we'd meet each other in this. And my heart just went, like, whoa, this is freaking real. We learned from there that we're just from the same soul energy. We're from the same, the same energy, from the same creative energy in the universe. And we parted ways after this. I mean, like, we hadn't talked to each other for 10 years. We just got in contact with each other about less than a year ago. And we talk probably once or twice a week. But it was just it's just kind of weird and unusual. We always thought that we were here for a reason. We were here for a purpose. And one day, he, out of the blue, after like 10 years of not talking to him, he sends me a video. He goes, dude, you need to listen to this guy. And it was one of my videos.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was one of my, I go, dude, that's my video. He goes, what? No way. Like, whoa, dude. So it was kind of like, yeah, it's just this weird serendipitous organization of the universe and how it all unfolds for you. And that's the beautiful thing. I call it the grand unfolding. It's the unfoldment of reality. Terrence McKenna used to talk about how Robert Anton Wilson and Terrence McKenna used to talk about how we have reality tunnels. We project our own reality tunnels. And that it unfolds in front of us depending upon our intentional energy and how it's directed and aligned with the universe. And the more synchronicities happens, the more that directional energy is intentionalized and aligned with the universal unfolding.
That's true.
Sorry.
It is. I love that story. You told me that story, and I was hoping you would tell it again. That's a very powerful story. And that is, when you have moments like that, it's the resounding yes that tells you that you're on purpose and you're traveling. And that power is affirming, and it's, you were talking about tunnels. I call them holograms. You step, like, a lot of times when I'm creating, if I'm really wanting to change lives, like I just did that this year, I stepped out of an old hologram and I created a new hologram that I literally stepped into that includes all of this. Like, I'm doing a whole build out. There's the Spirit Warrior's Way.
I love this.
And yeah, it's in order to really own yourself and to be sovereign within yourself, you have to peel away the layers of all the programming from the world, the things that you believe, the things that you think, the things that you taught. Like, if I were to ask you, who are you? And you can't tell me what you do for a job. You can't tell me anything in your material world, what you drive, where you live, who you're married to. You have to just tell me who you are. I mean, who is that?
I love it. Keep going, because you are vibing with me right now, because that's exactly what I do to people.
Yeah, you are. You're a very powerful mirror. You're a very powerful reflection, And so the Spirit Warriors Way it's a podcast, and it's a blog on Medium. I have a handful that this is a build out that I was hoping to have them all ready to release. And it's conversations with people that are doing, in this world, we have to have parallel systems that, because we need banking, we need healing centers, we need things, we need farmers, and we need ways to get water and ways to get things. And there are those that are building parallel systems that, to offer choice. And so those are the people that I'm talking to, and also the people that actually woke up themselves, that have discovered the light within themselves and who they are outside of their programs, and really the ages in between 1 and 6, and even in the womb. Those are the most powerful years of your life, and that's where all the little wiring gets put in there, and the inner child work is so important. So, and that's what I do. I coach people to find out more about the inner workings of themselves, and to find out why. Like I always thought that I was less important than other people. Well, my mother would fuss at me for I love my brother, and if he's watching, I know his son is. He used to kind of beat me up. We were a year apart, and the only way that I could really get back at him was with words, and so I would repeat the same words until he would go insane and then stop, and then he would tell on me. And I have whelps all over me, and my mom would fuss at me. I would be punished. And so that would tell me, it would put in my perception, because we live in a world of perception, that I'm less important than him or than anyone else. And so you have to figure out, you just have to let your light show you where your perceptions came from.
It's kind of interesting too, because when we're incarnate, we're here in this physical body, right? A lot of what's happening here is we have this marriage of the spiritual and the physical. This is the ancient alchemical marriage. This is the squaring of the circle, right? But in actuality, our physical body is taking on this representation of what it believes to be, what it believes itself to be in this physical realm. But who you believe yourself to be, and you just asked this question, who are you, is not necessarily who and what you really are. And that's the beautiful thing, because it's the other aspect of this unfoldment of self-realization, of the ipsum te gnosis, of the quote that stood at the doorway of the temple of the oracle at Delphi, was to know thyself. And this is where true discovery, true introspection actually comes about from. You asked about who you are, and this question that you ask people, it's very interesting, because on my spiritual journey and when I talk to a lot of people, one of the first questions that I always ask them is, who are you? Who are you? How do you define yourself? Now, most people would give a predetermined definition of what this is. They would tell you who they were. They would tell you, I graduated this. I was the captain of my high school football team. I graduated college here. I was married. I had kids. This is what I did. They would define themselves currently as a relic of their past, of all these accomplishments or failures accumulated throughout their past. And I said, well, it's interesting, because you're identifying yourself as someone you used to be. And you believe right now that you can become something else while defining yourself as what you used to be. And Einstein said that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So if you keep on believing yourself as someone in your past, you're going to keep on getting everything that you've already had. You're never going to get anything new, and you have to redefine yourself in order to become who you've always wanted to become. And I do this process where I tell them, think about whether you're Christian or not, or whether you believe in God or not, imagine that you had just passed and you go up there and God or your spiritual guides are there and you're doing your review. And standing next to whoever's there is you. But it's God's vision of you. It's God's creation of you. It's God's image of who he believed you to be. And ask yourself right now, do you compare with that person? Are you that person? Are you that person that God would create in his image of you? And 99% of the time people are like, no, I'm not. And I said, well, then put a vision in your mind of who that is. and become them. Lay out the path to become that person, the vision of God, who God created you to be. So I just love how you said that, because it was spot on with everything that I've learned in my life.
Yeah, and we are the difference that God makes, you know. And we came from light. We came from light, with light, to be light, to anchor light, and to move through it and with it and become that ultimate expression of yourself. You know, we're little creators. We have to understand that we do create the reality that we live in. A lot of people don't know that. And a lot of people say, why did this happen to me? Well, because you created it. And, you know, not everyone, and I've heard people say, especially in the truther communities and the greater communities, your purpose for incarnation can be anything. Let's say that you know, just like the Abraham, whatever, I am that.
Yeah.
And so that I am, in order to really be able to understand, but because we're wanting to get into our center with no judgment, we're really wanting to understand everything from every perspective, because that's why we actually incarnate, so that God can know itself, right? And we, each person that we run into is are our angels. They're the reflections of ourselves, and they're the people that we've agreed to incarnate with. But let's say that you wanted to see what it felt like to be a victim, or you wanted to see what it felt like to be rich, or you wanted to see what it felt like to have like a resting lifetime where you're just taken care of. I mean, it's all about spiritual development. It's all about being able to manage your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings, because you're modifying all of that to only, remember that Star Trek episode where every single thing that they thought manifested instantly?
Yeah, this is actually the episode is called The Traveler. It's in the third season of Star Trek Next Generation, and you have Wesley, who is compounded by this traveler who comes on to actually modify the engines on the Starship Enterprise. And this guy comes in, and he's an alien being that's very, very rare to the Federation. And he comes in and he starts to modify the engines. Well, what happens is they all of a sudden take off 120 million light years away from their point, and they calculate that it's going to take them 30 years in order to get back to the place that they just started from. They realize, how are we going to get back? And at this point in time, the traveler is actually passed out, because what they didn't realize is that he's actually a manifestor and creator, and that he's not modifying the engines in any bit, but he's giving them a taste of what it's actually like to be a creative being, and he's the one that actually manifested them 120 million light years. And what happens is he does it again, and he takes them to the creational zone of the universe, in the middle of the universe, at the point of creation, to where everybody on the ship, if they just think something, it instantaneously manifests, and they start manifesting all types of fears and also pleasures. And then they figure out what's happening, and he takes them home. It's one of my favorite episodes in the world.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I was actually thinking about, I remember that episode, but I was thinking about Kirk.
Mm-hmm. So this is the older one. Okay, this is the other one, not Next Generation.
One of his older, yeah. But yeah, just like, but can you imagine what kind of trouble we would be in if everything that we thought manifested immediately? We would be in a lot of trouble. So, and the other thing too is, because we are we're creator beings, we're in a slowed down reality, and everything that we think, it's getting faster. So I can manifest a lot faster now than I ever could before, and everything, the synchronicities come a lot quicker. Yeah. But when you, I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, we were talking about the creative nature of the universe and the creative nature of ourselves.
So we're actually learning how to be creator beings, and we're learning how to modify ourselves so that we create what we want. Mm-hmm. So we have a delayed reality. I mean, this conversation is actually happening in the past, even though it's happening in our awareness right now.
Reality is the first memory. Consciousness, what you experience as consciousness, is actually your first memory.
Right. And every, the layers of existence, there's the limitations that we have. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is, I always began my journey when I woke up in 1987. I wanted to know about other planets. I wanted to know, the Starseed Transmissions was just released, and then the Prism of Lyra. Have you read that?
No,
The
I
Prism
haven't.
of Lyra?
Tell us all about it, please.
So it talks about the whole beginning of the earth. It really has to do with the creation of the earth and why it's here. And the earth is actually a living library of everything that's ever existed. The planetary system of Lyra, but it's not called Lyra, but we call it Lyra for whatever reason. It's really close to a planetary body or a group of planets in the Draco system. There's a prism in Lyra where life can come in and out of this manifest reality, which includes, like, if you look up at the sky at night, all the stars that you can see is part of this manifest reality. The stars in Orion, the Pleiades, the Cassiopeia is where Lyra is, and these the Draco came in. And I don't know if because we are a free will universe, and I think that they were wanting to, I mean, who knows why we have opposition and why we have to deal with duality and why we have to protect ourselves. I mean, why can't we just exist harmoniously on a planet that has beautiful resources? I mean, in yoga, there's something called the tapas, TAPPAS, and that's the aggregate. And without that, you don't really grow. And so I think that those that came in through the Draco, that inhabited the Draco system, that are in more service to self, they began to rob resources in Lyra, and they began a path of destruction. And a lot of planets were destroyed. A lot of the humanoid species actually originated, according to. And when I read the Prism of Lyra, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But everything that I've been able to find corroborates this. So the Lyra was created, and then Sirius, and then the Orion. So that you have good and bad. There's humanoid races that have been taken as slaves and used for pawns, or used for energy, or used for whatever, warring. I mean, just like the Earth is influenced by every existence that has come before it. And I do think that the Earth is a way to help balance all of it. There's discord, and then there's there's peace in some of the star systems and some of the planets. And I think what started me off on this is, let's say there's life on other planets.
Okay.
Do they have to pay to live on their planet?
It's a good question. What is the social dynamic?
Yeah.
I think that what you're asking there is a question of conscious maturity.
It is,
of
exactly.
Spiritual maturity, right? We're born on these planets very, very immature and naked within God, as we can call it in the spiritual realms. But we don't have to pay to be here. We have to pay to survive, which means that we have to give attention to our environment and pay attention and give action to the environment in order to survive. But we don't have to pay each other to live amongst the nature. And it's somewhere in between we fall into that dichotomy, right? That evilness of where we have to basically start ruling over each other and paying to live within our society. And eventually I hope we evolve out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly my point. It's that there is a modus operandi for a takeover of a planet, especially in a free will universe. And I haven't really, the horrible things happen in Orion. And then there's peaceful, beautiful planets. And there's planets that have great mental capacity, great mental development. There's planets with great spiritual and emotional capacity, and then planets that have great the beings foster the planet and care for the planet, that kind of thing. So there's different types, and there's different technologies. Do you know what the number one valued technology in the entire universe is? I mean, throughout all the realms.
Do you want me to guess? Because I think I know.
Yeah, go ahead and guess.
DNA.
It's DNA. DNA is life technology.
Yep.
And within our DNA, we have the memory of everything. The people on this planet, if you are here, you have the soul codes to get here, because you have to come through the sun. You have to qualify to come into this realm, believe it or not. So you have a piece, you have a stake in the development and the success of the Earth. Mm-hmm. And for all of the planets and I learned this from Barbara Marciniak, the Palladians.
Oh, Barbara,
and
yeah.
I think also I think Prism of Lyra talks about it too, but a representation of everything that has ever existed, whether it has been destroyed or whether it will exist, is here on the Earth.
Interesting.
It's a living library, and that's why it's so valuable.
It's surreal in a sense, because if you've ever experienced a level of spiritual bliss, you felt it. You felt that. And it was interesting because you were just talking about planets, and you're talking about each planet has its own kind of like flavor. And immediately when you said this, it popped in my head a vision of, every planet or incarnation that you go to, or various time frames of that planet or different planets you go to, have different perspectives of evolution. Depending upon the frequency of that planet, that being is a mid-level spiritual being that's moving towards the next point of ascension. And so they're going to be on this planet within this system because that planet is more suited for their natural ascension. Is that kind of like what you're saying?
Well, kind of. There's also beings on planets that look like the Earth. When it was originally created, the Earth has 3 sine waves of existence on the planet, and originally it was 5th, 6th, and 7th frequency. Mm-hmm. But after the takeover, it was brought down into 3rd, 4th, and 5th. But we're moving up. It's like the Palladians say that once the inhabitants of a planet begin to come together and they realize themselves as one, and then they see their themselves at one with the planet, and then they begin to see themselves at one with their solar system, and then it goes on and on and on. So it's all that, just like the primordial consciousness that you were talking about in the beginning, where we're just pure consciousness and we are actually all one. When the consciousness does come together, it's called a completion. Mm-hmm. And so the universe is actually trying to know itself as one and complete. And there's different frequencies to incarnate in. Like the Earth has 9 primary dimensions, and the 8th dimension is the Akasha. It's where everything is. That's why a lot of times when you have a question for something, I always just go straight up to, and I don't know how many of the dimensions I'm actually working in. Some of them are very high because I can sense the person before they even came to the planet.
Interesting.
So yeah, and we do have in the 13th dimension, there is, I think that we do sort of land in the 13th dimension, and then we begin to split ourselves from there. And the 13th dimension has a completion of everything. It's like right now we're playing the disc of, because all time exists at once, and you can watch a movie on a disc, right? And you can backspace it to 3 minutes and 15 seconds, but it's still on the disc. Mm-hmm. And I think the 13th dimension is the complete disc. And then as you go down, then you can, and we were also talking before we were on that the reality can be melded and augmented. You can heal, and you can like you can go back through time and you can heal a certain situation. Like part of the healing process that I did was that there's one, I looked at all my choice points, and I wanted to empower myself more in the now. Mm-hmm. And I looked at all the choice points that I had, and there were several very, very poignant choice points. And one, I was afraid to go in one direction, and another direction was more safe. Although I had the courage and the ability to go into one direction, I was like 17 or 18. If I would have gone in the direction that I would have chosen today, it would have put me in a much more empowered place today. So you kind of go through, and you tell that person in that time space to take this road. And I actually grow her up, and so that she's even with me. And then I tell her to go out there and manifest that reality. I tell her, what she's capable of. And then I ask her to come back to me.
Isn't that, in essence, the Mandela Effect?
Exactly. And you guys were having that conversation. I was talking with you. and you can do this with your with the ancestral DNA mm-hmm. that you have. And there's contracts, agreements, and vows that our ancestors made. Just think about like all the land that they weren't allowed to own. They had to pledge allegiance to this family crest and toil the land, and they weren't, you know what I mean? Yeah. So people have given their power away to family crest, to the church, the banks, just think about all the places that you give your power away. And there's been rituals and spirit and mystery schools on this planet for a very long time, and these vows and agreements, they stay in the DNA, and they get passed down to posterity. And you can heal this. You can claim these contracts, agreements, and vows. Against drugs, newspapers. The news is a big one. Believe it or not, the Walter Cronkite era really did a big one. Wars, the belief in anything. Anytime we give our power away, and it kind of gets back into sovereignty. Who are we? And whenever, if you agree that someone can inject something into your skin, and you really don't know what it is, and you're not allowed to know. It's not, if someone can do that to you, who owns you?
Right. Well, one thing about the Redpill project, and one of the reasons I created the Redpill project, is because I've gone through many different journeys in my life. I've uncovered a lot of these understandings of mysteries, and at least the sense of my self-evident realization of what they are. And, I came up with this motto, is never believe anything anybody tells you, no matter who they are, what authority they proclaim, unless you can prove it and validate it with your own research, your own volition, and through your own beliefs and experiences. And this becomes critically important when we start talking about who are we in the sense of sovereignty. Because one thing we realize when I start looking at things in the sense of that motto is that all information is weaponized. We're in a world of information warfare, to where the point where anything that interacts with your senses, your external reality, has been weaponized against you. And that all that information that comes into your senses should be heavily scrutinized, criticized, and we should look at it in a hypercritical manner to see how it might be manipulating our actions in one way, shape, or form. And I always use this example, and this comes about through the natural law and understanding of the law of cause and effect. But if you get a paycheck from a business, right, you're paid a paycheck to forget about your dreams and to work for somebody else's. Okay? And you're basically giving your time, your energy, and your freedom in exchange for money, which you can utilize in something else, but it's to do something for somebody else that's going to benefit them. And it goes back to the same thoughts and actions in your own mind. Is if someone else controls the thoughts and the actions in your mind, and you exchange with that information, you freely accept it simply because that thing has an authority over you, and it manipulates your actions, you're no longer in control of the thoughts and the actions within your mind, which means that someone else is. That, by definition, is a slave, which means that freedom is discipline. Freedom is personal responsibility and self-discipline over your thoughts and your actions and within your own mind.
I agree. I agree. And it's like our behaviors are manufactured. They're manufactured through the school to prepare us to live that corporate life that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the exchange of money for your wages, for your, so that you actually have something tangible so that you can go out and exchange with. And actually, we don't earn money, we earn currency. We earn these fugazis, is what I call them. Did you see the Wolf? I have a gnat in here that keeps coming on my face. Did you see the Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
How they're fugazis. They're just created out of thin air. And these fugazis that we work for, it's manipulated just like everything else.
Yep.
You have to double yourself every couple of years in order to have the same output. It's like that is slavery too. Real money is gold and silver, and that is it.
Well, I look at real money as the things that we share amongst each other, because. Yes. I always looked at it like this, is that I give my time and energy, my skill sets to the marketplace, and that money, or whatever it is, the monetary exchange, is an intermediary of value, which means that I bring value to the marketplace, whatever my skill set is, whatever my energy is, and the marketplace pays me in an intermediary to where I can take that intermediary at some point in the future and exchange it for something that brings me value in my life, like a vacation, a car, or food, or whatever it might be. And that we have multiple different levels of intermediaries of value, many that have been proposed for exchange, gold and silver, but I look at the most important intermediary of value is the one that cannot be given back, the one that can never, ever be given back, and that's time, because that is the ultimate thing that we're exchanging in the sense of that value in the marketplace, which means that, you're actually hitting on this earlier, you were talking about it earlier, and you're talking about people's life paths, and we're talking about the unfoldment of people's life paths. And that you said that some people believe that they can go out there and actually become anything they want and do anything they want within this incarnation. But what you find out is you can, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be aligned with your life path. But if you tend to do something that you're very, very passionate about, and you organize your life around that passion, and you monetize that passion to where you can have an intermediary of value set up to where that thing is giving you value back. When you put value in the system, the value comes back, and you're very, very passionate about that, your life will just unfold in front of you. The universe will just bring synchronicity after synchronicity, and you'll understand that it is your true purpose to be here was for that passion in life, or whatever that is in your path of life. And so it's kind of interesting to think about it in that perspective.
And that is true. That is true. You said it so beautifully. That is the absolute truth, and that's what we're really here to do. But the difficulty is, the cog is put in the wheel to really know what you don't want, or to really know what you want. You have to understand what you don't want, right? Mm-hmm. And so the life that we really don't want is always presented to us. So we have to actually make the choice to not live that life. The life that's, and I don't think that our education system will always be this way. I don't think that I do think that there will be truth, and I don't think that people will believe that they can rule over others or make rules for others. And I don't think that the way that we live here on this planet will always be the same. But the challenge is, the more people that live their lives according to their passions, and that deprogram and that have that sovereignty, the more people that come together and do that, that's how the new reality will be made. And that's how the old will fall away. And when I first started waking up, again, I would get really mad at the people who just didn't get it, who didn't understand that they've been lied to their whole life, and who just continue to believe the lies, and they can't see through it. And it's like, really, do you really believe this still? I mean, aren't you big? Aren't you an adult? And I think that the programming is so thick, but there's also a group of us that, if everybody woke up at the same time, we would have utter chaos. So I think that there's people that have incarnated, and think about how much easier it is to live sort of asleep. You don't have to think about any of this. You just eat what you want. You're happy at work. And anyway, I think that there's a group of people that have agreed to come and hold the old reality while the new one is being built.
Interesting.
So, so I do think that there's purpose. I think there's purpose in every single light and in every single life.
Now, you said something there that made me think, and I love this, in that, you can be ignorant to the path of life and just walk through it. You can eat what you want, you can drink what you want, and be happy. But I think that everybody out there knows that. Have you ever had that endorphin rush after a good workout, right? You go and you work out, and you're like, man, why don't I do this all the time? This feels amazing, right? And the same thing happens is when you get on that vibe of your passion of life. Is you sit down and you finally write in a journal. And you're like, this is the best thing in the world. Why haven't I been doing this every day of my life, right? And see, is you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I always call this evolution. I call evolution, spiritual, mental, and physical evolution, is when you learn something that you do not know that you do not know. It's an epiphany. It's an aha. It's the only way that we evolve. And that if we sit there and we succumb to the things that we do know, we sit in this bliss or this ignorance of, I'm just going to eat this and be happy. You hear it all the time. I like my 9-to-5 job. I go, I work, I come home, the dinner's ready, I watch my football, I watch my shows, I go to bed, I do it again. I'm okay. I'm happy with the way my life is. But are you? Because here's the thing, is you haven't gone out and you don't know what you don't know. You've never experienced maybe your passion, maybe your path in life. And see, that's what people are missing.
Yeah, and to live it is one thing. It takes a lot of courage, Josh.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage. And you can have a side hustle that turns into your passion in your life. Like my brother is a big barbecue guy, and he has a barbecue business now. He's living his passion. And it was the pandemic the response to it that sort of drove him there. And I think a lot of people, I think that whole thing, the whole 2020 was a great awakener. It made you stop and be still, and you realized that you didn't have to get in your car. You didn't have to drop your kid off at 7. We have babysitters in our neighborhoods there's a babysitter that's been in my neighborhood ever since I can remember, since the 90s. And people drop their babies off at 7 a.m. They come flying around the corner, dropping their kid off. They're in a hurry, and they fly out, and then they get them 12 or 13 hours later. It's so sad.
It is sad.
And that's not what humans are supposed to do. That is not what life is. And I think the more we stop doing the old life, as we wake up to the new, as we wake up to new possibilities, just do things differently. It shows us that we can. But it takes a lot of courage to just live your life path and to have trust. I mean, if you're going to take that leap of faith, like when I left my job and started a practice, it took a leap of faith to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I like that perspective as well, because it kind of throws things in the context. We have this pandemic that occurs. We have Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, all happening here. And we have these elites trying to put us into this slave matrix prison. But in actuality, what happened is we had a great awakening. We had people realize the monotony of the everyday life of dropping our children off at 7 a.m. and picking them up at 3 or 5 p.m. and being content with that and being okay with that, allowing someone else to completely raise our kids while we go through without the monotony of the working for somebody else, forgetting about our dreams and working towards theirs. And we come to this point of realization where we wake up and we say, why the hell am I doing this myself? Why the hell am I doing this to my children? I don't even know my children. And, then people get to sit home for, the last 2 years. A lot of people just sat home. And they sat home and they saw who they were. They saw who their children were, and they didn't recognize either one. And I think that scared the living daylights out of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a great awakening. And my practice has really picked up. It has, I stayed really busy all through 2020, 2021. And it is the Great Awakening. And people, they don't know, just like you said, that they don't know what they don't know. And people think they're scheduling an appointment for a Thai massage, because I have a physical practice as well. And they end up getting aligned, and they end up getting clear, and they end up being, I always align some people to their spirit, like all the way through, and clear the energy field, just clear all the muck that keeps them from really knowing themselves. And if you have a really heavy heart, it's you can't really express yourself. And if I would have had, I was lucky enough to not have to drop my kids off at daycare, but I kind of did for a little while, but I mean, not daycare. My mother-in-law took care of them, but it gave me a heavy heart to do that. And I don't think that people really want to do that. I think it is heavy. I think the world that we have is, I mean, it's not all dark, but I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's natural. And so, like when you get an energy clearing and your heart is not as heavy, you can feel who you really are, and you can feel how you feel. Imagine that. Imagine having the sandbags lifted from your shoulders and your heart and your mind. It's like a whole new. It's refreshing, and it's.
Absolutely. And explain how this works. Explain how this process works, of this healing process.
Okay. It's okay. So you're physical, like you and I are physical beings. We're focused here in this physical reality, but in actuality, what's happening is our energy fields are doing this. Like if you could go into higher dimensions, you wouldn't even see the physical. You would see the energy moving like this. And everyone that's participating in this, that all of our energies melding just like this. And so a lot of people think that they are, that their spirit is where's your spirit?
Right.
Like your spirit is in your body. Well, your body is actually in your spirit first, your energy first. And I think one of the main things that humanity is learning right now is frequency, and learning waves, frequency, vibration. Everything is vibration. Like I don't look at things as good or bad. I look at them as high vibration, low vibration, or the frequency of it. And when you have an energy field that has an accumulation of lower frequency vibrations from your thoughts and your feelings, then you're going to have a lot of density around your energy field. And you can, just like the Wheeler experiments, where a particle and a beam, right? You can influence reality by witnessing it and intending it. And so you can take intended life force energy to influence other life force energy, and all energy is energy. So you can influence energy. And we were talking about distance sessions. You can do this in person, and you can also do it in a distance session. Actually, distance sessions are a lot more powerful than a physical session. Physical session, you have density in your body that you can pull out. You have energy lines. And just like a river, whenever it runs into a clog, you're going to get clogged energy. And so that's where pain is going to develop. And there's things that go on in your energy field too. Just like I call them dust bunnies. If you think the same thought, have you ever gotten into the mire of your own mental inflexibility, and you're in this wheel of thinking, well, this is that. People get into that a lot, especially when you're in a stressful situation. Well, you actually have thought forms that create themselves right here. And even though you're not thinking those thoughts anymore, those thought forms are thinking those thoughts for you and influencing your brainwave and influencing the way that you think. So you can clear all that off too. But you have energy centers that can align, and you have an outer field it's a plasma field, just like the sun has a heliosphere and the earth has a plasmic field. We have a field of plasma around us that contains all the information that we've ever thought or felt. And
now is that the field of like biophotons?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
It can be. And I do sound healing too. We were going to talk about that. I have a class on Spirit School that teaches you how to. It's really really basic, but there's two demonstrations of a session. You can use a weighted tuning fork to activate the bones, the memory of the bones. It's amazing what the information you have in your bones, and you can, like, when you know something, you know it in your bones.
Yeah.
And you can your bones create your white blood cells. It's not just your thymus that creates your immunity, it's your bones too. So I have a way that you activate the long bones, and then it's actually a brilliant. And the guy that was the model had he couldn't lift his arm, and it healed his arm just from the. I kind of went into a little bit more, but
yeah.
Anyway, the
well, so we're talking about
the plasma.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go to the plasma. That's fine. Go ahead.
Getting into sound therapy, and because we are electromagnetic beings, we have an electromagnetic shield around us, and when it's weak, then that's when we're susceptible to illnesses and stuff. And honestly, I think that's how illnesses are spread. I don't think, especially the stuff that's going on now, I don't think it's spread hand to mouth. I think it's spread energy field to energy field, especially with the transference. We can talk about that. But most information, like the energy of a substance that you learn in homeopathy, which used to be our pharmacopoeia, the energy of a substance can be more powerful than the substance itself, the effects of it. And when you strengthen your energy field, and when you strengthen the chakra system, imagine you have these little mini power stations in your body that are responsible for different things, different thought processes, different organ functions, different, like your heart is responsible for your lungs and your skin and your physical heart, and your thymus, your immunity, and your gut holds a lot of information. Your gut actually makes more brain chemicals than your actual brain. Your brain chemicals are really made in your gut, and that's where your dreaming body is. When people have horrible nightmares, I go straight into the gut, and I clear the dreaming body in the gut. And so you're talking about photonic light. You can actually measure. You can take a tuning fork, and you can put everything that you've ever thought, everything that you've ever felt from your birth is in your energy field, and everything is pushed out. From all the new fresh information is pushed out. So it's a store of information. And if something tragic happened to you, say you were in a car accident, then you would have like a blank space in your energy field. You could play a tune. Let me just strike a tuning fork.
Yeah.
So you can play this sound through
Right.
the energy field, and it's a coherent sound, but there could be a dead space in the energy field, and that could be a traumatic event, and you're holding that trauma in the energy field, and the sound can find it. And just like when a hernia, a hole in the body is a hole in the energy field. There's always something traumatic that happened, or something emotional, or something marked in the life experience that brought a hole in an energy field that made a hole in the gut possible. And anyway, the sound finds it, and it puts a coherent. And I use rattles, and I use other things to create space, or drumming that can bring the energy together, and then I re-strengthen it. But you can actually measure photonic light. You can step into like a copper tube, and there's devices that can measure the photonic light output that your body is like holding and then leaking. And then you get a sound session, and like even the sound sessions that were used in the study, this is Eileen McCusick's work. That's where I learned sound healing. Just after 30 minutes, and most sessions are about an hour and a half, you lose 25% less photonic light leaking out of the body.
That's interesting. So we actually had a guy on about a month and a half ago. His name is Dave the Mystic, and he's actually a classically trained electrical engineer. He works for defense contractors, and he was talking about an experiment that they actually did in the laboratory of measuring photonic light. And he said that no one ever believed that we actually project photonic light out of our eyes, but in actuality it's measurable, and there's actually biophotons that are given off by the photonic receptors in our skin as well as our eyes, and we are actually projecting biophotons out almost 6 feet from our body, from every part of our body. Yep, at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the energy field, the magnetics of your heart energy is more powerful than the energy in your head. So feeling something is much more. Have you ever? I always say that I want to build my heart energy enough so that it lifts the vibration of every room that I walk into. You can feel it. You can feel that magnetic energy.
Jitta Krishnamurti actually used to have this, that people would know he was in town simply because they felt him. They would feel the love and the energy penetrating off of him, because he said that whenever he would enter a city or a town, he would expand the field of his heart to encompass the whole city, and people would just show up where he's at, and he'd give the free speeches.
I believe it. And see, it's that intention. He's sent his heart energy into the space.
Yep.
And magnetic attraction is how things come to us. And so he magnetically attracted the crowd to come to find him. Yep.
There's actually a story. Ram Dass talks about this. Man, I forget the guy's name, but Baba, the ancient shade of India, who was his guru, him and Krishna Das' guru. And he was saying how they were in India and they were going to this festival, and they got there late, and they were, instead of going to Kathmandu where they were going to meet Baba, their mentor, their guru, they decided to go to this festival and take like a detour. And they got there, they got dropped off there, and they're like hundreds of miles away from this place that they were supposed to be going. And the festival's over, and they're like walking through the dirt and in the trash of this old festival, and all of a sudden pulls up a van, and it's their guru. And he said, I knew you were going to be here, and I knew you were going to need a ride, so hop in, let's go. And it just like, how did he know that, right? Like, how did he know that? And is it the intentional energy that the guru put out there that said, hey, look, change their thoughts, make them go to this event, I'll pick them up there? Or was it their intentional energy that they put out there? Or was it the synchronicity between the two communicating? Or is it this higher level of, who knows, right? But it's fascinating to even think about that. That's kind of how the universe is coordinating these things.
Yes, it is. The universe is it's a blend of cooperative components that work together. And he has done the work of modifying the mind and the emotions and the body. There's steps to that, and there's concentration, and there's extended concentration, and then there's something called absorption, that you're absorbed into your own unity, and you exist on all time at that time, so you can automatically know. I'll give you an example. One time I was driving, and I stepped into a new hologram just came around me all of a sudden, and then I saw myself in a future event, and I knew, because I was wondering if something was going to happen, and then I got a glimpse of it just in this hologram. It surrounded me for a little while, and I was able to experience both realities, and that answered my question. So your consciousness, I see how he knew how that they were going to be there, and what they knew. It's just that elevated space that he's not existing in. He's existing in the real. He's not existing in the matrix.
Isn't that interesting? It's because we had this linearity of time that we experience, but in actuality, the linearity of time is not real. It's an illusion. It's the grand illusion, if we want to call that. I always talk about how consciousness, what you're experiencing right now, this exact moment, what you believe to be the moment, is actually a first memory, because your body has to experience all the external environment aspects. So your senses have to take in all of these things happening in your external environment. It processes that through your neurological and your biochemical systems, and then your brain has to process it. It has to recall it through your memory, your neurological structures, and then it says, hey, this is what's there. So there's this 100 millionth of a second delay before you actually experience reality, which means that reality in itself is delayed, which means it's your first memory. And I've always talked about obtaining a point of enlightenment or samadhi is actually bridging that gap, is removing that gap of how you're experiencing, how your body's processing all of reality. If you could bridge that gap, you would be experiencing the actual now. And it's not linear. It's expansive in time. You can't even describe the word for the experience that comes about except beyond expansive. There's nothing else I can even explain how it is, but right? But
yeah,
definitely not
the
linear.
higher dimensions of reality.
Yeah.
You can literally exist in that, and then sometimes I don't know what dimension I'm in or what reality I'm in because a lot of times when I'm working, I'm in a bit of a trance, and I'm doing work, and you go back home and or you go to the grocery store, and by all means, don't go to Walmart because you don't know what planet you actually are walking around on. But yeah, you do. It is that it's that high. Reality. I was learning what was I going to tell you? So when you do distance work, just like in the X-Men, the way that I do it, just like in the X-Men, you have the guy in the wheelchair that he can find you on your soul. Mm-hmm. He can find you. Like it's like I go up to my high self, and then I call their high self, and then I find them in the reality, and then I create a hologram around the both of us, or hologram around them, hologram around me, and then I call in guides and angels and those that can assist in whatever healing or whatever knowledge I intend that they come to their highest and greatest healing, their highest and greatest alignment, their highest and greatest understanding. And it just I always start by I always activate that you have an energy field you have an energy center above your head, then you have an energy center above that. And I always start by activating that and bringing it out, and then flooding the energy field in the body. I flood everything with plasmic light and just begin to reset and just pull everything away. Sometimes you have to really, most of the people that I work with are more spiritually advanced, but someone who's been through a whole lot, or it can take a while for me to be able to see them in light. And so once the light clears, then I can kind of go in and see what it is that they need, what needs to be adjusted. And actually, a lot of people have been sick lately. A lot of people are getting shots, and I had a little train of people that the sooner you get a shot, okay, the sooner you get energy work after a shot, the more effective it is, because you can stop the rewrite. You can rewrite the rewrite.
Interesting.
And you can spin out the nano. I learned a command language to spin out the nano, and I actually see it spinning out. And you can tell that they're using different formulas in different parts of the nation. I even worked with someone in Ireland who, and so I can see what they're doing. But yeah, and you can do a whole lot in distance. I'll give you an example. I worked with someone in Illinois. She moved to this farm, and she was living the life that she wanted, and she wanted to have an animal ancestry, or she wanted to have an animal sanctuary.
Okay.
And so she had some horses and she had some dogs or whatever, but when she got on that land, her legs started aching to the point where she had to walk around with a broom outside, and she had a walker inside, and she didn't understand what was happening and why her legs were just aching every day. And I could tell that she had actually put on a lot of weight, but she was very spiritually protected. And when I went in to find out what was going on with her, it actually took me to the land itself. Because in another lifetime, she was a woman that had a baby and a toddler, and she was a peaceful Indian, and the troops came in and they killed and burned everything.
Oh, wow.
And she was forced to the Trail of Tears. She was forced to walk away. She was like sort of lined up with, she was tied, and she had this infant and this child, and she had to leave her home, and her husband was killed. And she vowed that it was horrible destruction in that time, in that time space. Exactly where her house was.
Wow.
Is where she came back. But in that moment, as she was walking away, she vowed that she was going to come back. And just like you and your friend vowed that you would meet each other, most of the time, a lot of the things that actually play out in our lives are from vows that we've made or intentions that we have. So I actually had to go in and clear. I told her about that incarnation, and I brought in light, and I actually cleared the pain in the land and cleared that incarnation and freed her of it. And then she said that she was dancing in her kitchen that night, and she could actually walk to feed the horses.
Wow.
without she said a rake or a broom. Yeah.
So it's almost like cursed land.
It was the pain of the pain of her memory, and it was the residual frequencies that were there on the land. Yes. But the area of the land that needed to be cleared, it was a broad area.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and it's interesting to note that through the linearity of time, the progression of time, there's overlapping nodes of resonance. We've shown this with optimization theory of how we've kind of put all this together, but you have these overlapping nodes of resonance throughout time. So you could have like a fractured event throughout time that occurred, like Gettysburg, right? Mm-hmm. And what it'll do is it will ripple through all those other node points through time. So, every 20 years or every 10 years or every 5 years or every 3 months or something like that, you're going to have a point of reference, of resonance from that time frame to where that negative or that deathly energy was actually there. And it just rings throughout eternity until someone goes in and heals it and brings it back to this point of neutrality.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are born to do that are doing it. And people say, if they go to a haunted place, it's like, if I go to a haunted place, I'm going to bring down light. I'm going to free those people. I'm not going to mess with them. I'm going to help them. And there's discarnate beings everywhere all the time. We just can't see them. And it's a healing. So the healing has to go. And the suffering and the pain that's going on the earth, it is rippling out to other realities, and it's a problem. And so there's a lot of people that have come to help heal that and bring it into a neutrality, bring it up, because it's not natural on a planet to be ruled. Like if you thought about another planet, and let's say there's life or there's a civilization on that planet, do you sort of see them as more unified, or do you see them as having to present papers to cross a border?
There's a movie out there called I'm gonna forget the name of it. It's a newer movie. It's a city. It's something of the Thousand Cities of Valerian, the city of 1,000 cities, Valerian. Okay. And it starts out with showing this kind of like avatar-like species that lives just in harmony with nature, and with each other, and they have kind of like their projected like king and queen, but everybody shares everything. Everything's beautiful. It's kind of a utopia, but that's kind of how I envision other species, right? They have maybe a hierarchical system, but it's a very, very peaceful hierarchical system.
Yeah. And that's how our system should be. It should be a peaceful system. And, just like, in Star Trek, I love to reference Star Trek, that they have replicators, and that they don't need money for their subsistence, and they don't need whatever they need, that they just command it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and there is, so there's so many places we can go from here. Those that are in service to self, those that cannot create for themselves, and that's one reason why the humanity is enslaved, because the group, and I've heard you say that there's a virus that came onto the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, but the way that I picture it is more of a mental virus, that because you have ascended masters and you have these layers of protection that a planet has. There are species that the hair on the back of their neck sticks up when there's a nefarious being even approaching their planetary system. We really have those kinds of senses. And those that are in service to self, they've lost their light, they've lost their way, and they have to take from others. That's how this whole thing started. Let's just say, and I'm not sure that this is exactly how it went down, but this is an example. I'm sure there's a lot of truth in it, but there could be other truths as well, because there is no the truth, and that. But let's say the Draco, they were very developed as far as like being creative for war, kind of like what's going on our planet. And just like the Avatar planet, there's a group of people that went to rob that planet, and they really had no respect for the life there, right? They were willing to tear down their main home. There have been a lot of destruction from stealing resources instead of trading, or instead of doing it in an elevated sense. The mental the mental virus that came and took over, it began like with the blood sacrifices and all of that. It put just the, and take out the blood sacrifice idea. It put the idea that you could have power. You can be a benevolent king. For instance, those that were in charge of the pyramids, you could be a benevolent king. Why do you harness all of this energy and then spread it to the people for the good of everything? I mean, imagine if this could be your power. And those are the thoughts and the mind viruses that did infiltrate the minds of men. And I think that's how our planet got infiltrated through that way at first.
I could actually see it. It's we call it the destruction of Atlantis. We call it many different things, but it could be the subversion of the will of the self, of the rise of ego. It could have been an actual literal virus or parasite. It could have been an infiltration from some interdimensional extraterrestrial. Don't know what it was specifically.
It's kind of,
but it happened.
It's really going on now, isn't it? There's sort of a mind virus that's going on right now. And so I think the mind virus thing is, you have to own your mind. You have to own your heart. You have to know who you are. And you have your the entirety of all of your gifts in your DNA, every single cell. You have the entirety of all of your gifts in your heart. And it's really just activating that. And
it's a beautiful way to look at it too, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that because humanity has collective akasha, and we have collective evolution, and we have collective karma, if you will, but so we have to, I think that we're building from the ground up sovereignty. And I do see our planet being peaceful one day.
Yeah.
And I do see that technology being used for good and for evolution. Like a lot of the spaceships are, there's implants that with the Palladians, they have implants that, and I say implants like they're trying to do to us, but there are good implants that assist you in communicating to a ship. I remember waking up, okay, this is fringy. You want to get really fringy? I remember waking up from a dream. I was in like an auxiliary vehicle. It looked like a Formula One race car, and somebody was next to me, but I was flying a ship with my mind. And that's what other species can fly ships just with their mind. And some of the Palladians have implants that connect their frequency with the ship. But I was landing like a Formula One little auxiliary ship, and I was using my mind to do it. And I was bringing the ship in. There was somebody next to me onto a ramp. And it was me jumping into my body and realizing what was going on. So there was a part of like, holy heck, what's going on? And the person next to me, and it wasn't like a human like you and I are human. I really don't know. All of a sudden, the person next to me is like hitting me going, what the hell are you doing? You lost concentration. You're going to make us crash. What the hell? And so right when I realized what was going on, I jumped out of that scene and let the being that was like landing that craft do it. But I knew that because my awareness joined that craft, or that scene, it changed it. And so the driver lost focus for a minute. It was me going, what the hell?
Right.
And if I looked away, the craft is going to go where I'm looking. And the person said, what are you doing? You're going to crash us.
So it's interesting too, because a friend of mine, we were reminiscing one night in the early morning, and I said, imagine if we're all just really spiritual beings, and that space is just the place where spiritual beings live and dwell, and that we traverse space as spiritual beings, and that we feed off of stars. And that, different stars, blue and white and red, and these are just different energies that we can feed off of. But we're always told to never go towards the planets, because the planets are these, like, they'll suck you in. They'll steal your soul. They'll steal your energy. And they just stay away from these planets. But they're very, very addictive, because when you get near these planets, they give off this energy, and the energy becomes very, very addictive. And we were joking around. And he's like, oh, no, I'm being sucked into the planet. I'm being sucked into the planet. And all of a sudden, bloop, you're born and you come out of the womb of a woman on the planet. And so think about it as if we were actually spiritual beings, and we're just traversing the universe. And when you get close to a planet, it sucks you in, and now you have to like get out of this prison and get back into your spiritual realm, right? But it was interesting because I had this one thought one day, and it was not a thought. It was kind of like words were given to me, and it said, water is for the fish, ground is for man, air is for birds, and space is for mind. And it kind of goes to the point of, if you look at the environment of space, what is it made for? It's not made for a body. It's not made for a human body. It's not made for anything, right? But it's made for mind. Because if you look at it, it's very, very expansive. To travel those distances, there's only one way to close the gap to travel those distances, and that's mind. That's thought.
Consciousness,
right? And even Dr. Stephen Greer has talked about this, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, of how these beings' ships are actually consciously controlled, and that there is no such thing as faster than light travel, but these craft, this technology, is actually operated through consciousness itself. It's an amplifier of consciousness.
Exactly. It is. It's an amplifier of consciousness. And we're used to push out technologies, push out electricity so that it can be monetized. But electricity lives in the air. It should be free. And the consciousness, there are consciousness highways, there are wormholes, there are space-time like bubbles that you can traverse, that you can you're not actually, whenever you are traveling, you can there really is something you can collapse your physicality and put it into the space, and then move from there, and then re-establish your physicality, depending on how physical you are. Of course, if you're in a ship, then you're going to have some physicality, right?
Yeah.
No matter what realm you're in or what dimension you're in. But then you recompose. I did 2 past life regressions I want to share with you.
Yeah.
One was the very first time that I went in, I went in through my heart. I went really deep into my heart, and I didn't see anything. And I was expecting to see, buildings or a farm or something. Anyway, I went into space, and I was everything and then nothing at the same time. I could be aware of myself, and I was expansive, and then I could also be just me, just my consciousness. And the other thing that I realized is that we are, and then I looked around, I took the time to look around, and there were little fiber optic cable strings of energies that I was connected to all of these different areas, like planets and stars and places and things. I was connected to all this energy at the same time. I was tethered, but then I wasn't fully just. And I think that's where we come from, just full consciousness, and we decide to incarnate. And there's always a purpose. There's a purpose. Oh, and the Palladians also, like I work with star beings, the Palladians also, there's one Palladian that put her body into stasis where she was, because there is such thing as charity out there in the universe. And she was choosing to come to Earth and become an awakened being and help spread light and talk about light. And that was her charity. And so, like, within your lifetime, and we have very short lifetimes, but it hasn't always been that way. And we can we can pull that energy out. Like, our perception of time is one thing that makes us age. Oh, and the other, speaking of like dematerialization, reminded me of this. I was in another past life regression. I woke up. I actually woke up because I saw when I went deep enough, my memory or my awakening automatically went to a transporter. I was actually being transported. I was a ball of light, and it was in a room just like the transporter room on Star Trek. I mean, it was very, very similar, but there was windows. Everything was, you could see that there were no walls. You could see through everything. Anyway, and I'm like, wow, these things are real. And that sent me right back in.
Oh my goodness. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I was on a transporter, and I remembered it, and I remembered what it was like to come into consciousness as a ball of light into more of a form, and I was witnessing others doing the same.
Now, when you talked about the fiber optic cables, this it just flashed back to my past life regression, because in my past life regression, I remember something very, very similar, and it was kind of like the if you remember the fiber optic cables that were all lit up and they had the points of light and how they all extend. I've always envisioned that connected and strung through the linearity of time, even though it's kind of all encompassing. But I've seen the same thing in the astral space, in the meditative trance-like space. It surrounds you, and they're all over the place, and they're points of like these like lines of light, or these webs of light. And
web is a really good way to
describe
it.
It's all around you. It surrounds you, and you almost mistake it for the stars, but it's not.
It can be bright, or it can, and when you're doing a reading for someone, that's how the information comes in, just like a little fiber optic cable. You just get a hit, and then you say something, and it becomes a line, and then it becomes a stream of energy, a stream of thought. Yeah,
absolutely, very crazy.
I know the existence. I think. I mean, we've been all over the place, and I don't know that I was able to hold a thought because there's the information is so expansive, and it's just so big, and it's just so much, and it's so much fun to talk about.
It is.
I really like looking at life this way because it's full of potentiality. It's the potential of life. And I don't want to live the same day over and over and over and have it become a lifetime, like 20 years. You're not living 20 years. You're living the same day over and over for 20 years. I want my life to be expansive and I want it to be exciting. I want to do different things and teach people that they can use their gifts. Everyone has a gift. And I think that that's the other thing too that will come from humanity is we all know that we can balance ourselves and we can heal ourselves. Every single human has the ability to heal themselves. And it's just learning that. And our minds have been tuned to disempowerment. Our minds have been tuned to a matrix overlay. So we have to peel those layers away and find the truth, find what's not true, and then that illuminates what is true. And it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. You just do it. Just being self-aware and just knowing what's in your heart and knowing, it's just like the Merovingian in the Matrix. He sits back and he's cool, and he's in charge of this whole place. And people, the Matrix team comes in and he says, "Oh, I've seen you before. What do you want this time?" And he's like, I will sit with you, but go have a seat with me. He's like, he knew that he could just get rid of them right away. And he knew that he had the power. And the reason why he had the power, do you remember the reason why he had the power?
No, what's that?
He had the power because he knew why they were there, but they didn't know why.
Interesting.
So they had no power in that space. And it's just like all of the things that have been taken away from our why and from our knowing and redirected, that takes our power away. And when we do have the why am I here? Why? And I'm not talking about walking around aimlessly. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Your purpose is to know who you are and to decide what you want. And then condition your reality from your consciousness to bring it into being. And that is why we're here.
I love that.
Because it's a school. We're here. And it took us all night to get down to the crux.
Yeah. We got there though.
But it is. It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And however you get there.
It's the evolution of the soul, right? It's the evolution of who we are, the ascension of who we are, of the coming into being, in a sense. What do you have coming up, Lea Anne? And where can we find you?
Okay, I have a website and a podcast being released very soon. It's called The Spirit Warrior's Way, and my blog is going to be found on Medium with the same name, The Spirit Warrior's Way. I have a sound healing class on Spirit School, and I'm doing a crystal healing class. We didn't really talk about that, but I'm doing a crystal healing class. It was one of my first, when in 1987, when I woke up, I got straight into crystals and crystal healing.
Yeah.
And Katrina Raphael, her books taught me what crystal healing is. And I took her 16-part course, and each part of that course was like 6 to 8 hours. And I learned how to do crystal healing through her. And now I have something that I teach. It's similar, but very different. And that it will be on Spirit School very soon. So be on the lookout. To find me, it's to get a distance session or to work with me. It is energyanatomy.net, or you can find me just on Facebook at Lea Anne, LEA space ANNE, and then on Instagram I'm Leanne_energy healing.
Beautiful, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was an awesome conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I can't wait to have you back on again. We're actually going to see each other probably here in Oregon or in possibly even San Diego. So we're going to have to do a sit-down live interview. Then that will be awesome. I hope that we can have just as much fun. Everybody else, we're going to be joining in about 25 minutes. We're going to be going to Fringe After Dark, our subscription show. Lea Anne is more than welcome to join us if she wants to. I'll invite her and tell her how to get there. But for everybody else, we'll see some of you guys in the social Redpill. We'll see some of you guys at Fringe After Dark. Everybody else, we'll see you tomorrow. You guys have a good night. God bless. Much love. Respect. Take care.